Content warning. This podcast contains bones, blood, smut, and swear words.
Before we get into the good shit this week, we wanted to remind you that we've launched a Patreon. For just a few bucks a month, you get extended games, brand new content, access to our notes and murder boards, and much more. So if you're worried about being lonely in November and December when we take our season break, you can get all the Frontline Fifth backlog you've been dreaming of by heading to patreon.com/frontlinefifth or following the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to that sweet, sweet Bone Zone action.
Nothing is safe. Nothing. This episode is just spoiler city, people.
Act 1. False things have a piquancy. Piquancy? Oh god, this is going horribly. The curtain opens on a nearly empty stage. Upstage left, an enormous cardboard tree looms with outstretched branches. Little baubles dangle from its finger-like twigs, small bones tied with twine, strips of half-burnt paper, CDs flashing iridescent light. At the roots of the tree sits certified Bone Witch Marie, reading a podcast episode script. Wait, Marie, what do you want your costume to be?
This is the brown version of Ianthe in leather pants, but like browns with a very nice brown cloak.
All brown, solid fifth house, we'd love to see it. But Marie is slowly coming to realize that they have collectively given Hannah too much free rein. She looks directly at the audience.
Oh, shit.
Enter Josh, stage right, clothed in, Josh, what are you wearing to our Theater of the Absurd party?
Wearing a black hooded cloak and a Venetian mask with bells on it.
Josh, seeming not to notice Marie, wanders up to the tree and pulls a skeletal human hand off of one branch.
Well, I'm definitely in the right place.
He does a little dance with the hand. Are you more of a soft shoe guy, or are we looking at, like, break dancing? Jazz, samba?
I think foxtrot.
Oh, boy. Well, it was a good run.
Josh finishes his dance with an elaborate bow.
Okay, but you explicitly said I didn't notice her when I came in.
Oh, so you can't bow to Marie. Huh.
You've got to notice these little details.
Josh tosses the skeletal hand over his shoulder, where it is deftly fielded by Sonia, who has entered unnoticed from stage left.
Josh, are you fighting with the narrator?
Do you think they'll get the reference? Sonia, what are you wearing in the dream world?
I appear in a floor-length ball gown. It is white, the bodice is encrusted with gold brocade, filigree that seems to drip down the dress into the full skirts. I have elbow-length silk white gloves, perfectly pristine, that seem to end in claws more than fingertips. The base of the dress is muddied and torn, as if I had been running through the woods. Upon my brow sits a cardboard crown.
Marie rushes forward, throwing her hands up.
Enough of this shit! We're doing a goddamn podcast! Who the fuck is Hannah?
The tree spits out some twigs and drops the random shit it was holding, and I say, I was inside you all along!
God damn. Talk about welcome to the Bone Zone.
Gross.
This is the fucking dumbest thing you've ever done.
I'm so glad to be
Amazing.
involved.
Incredible.
I'm so happy.
Oh, God. Act 2, if you would be so good. Hello and welcome to the Frontline Fifth. Yes, you are in the right place. A Lock Tomb podcast where 4 dried-out bone witches play trick-or-treat, knocking on coffin doors in Tamsin Muir's short story and Theater of the Absurd play, The Unwanted Guest. Today, I am happy to introduce Marie, playing the part of the ever-on-weed Ianthe, returning guest Josh as the persistently polite Palamides, and returning guest and part-time merch witch Sonia as the voice with opinions. I am your host, Hannah, and I'll be playing all the hooded attendants you could ask for, so just let me know if you need a glass of wine or a friend to duel with. Today is, as we've already mentioned, full of spoilers for everything in the series up through Nona the Ninth. So if that's not what you want, I encourage you to throw your phone in a lake, or just skip the episode. Today we're breaking down The Unwanted Guest. Marie, can you tell us what the fuck is going on here in literally my favorite of Tamsin's short pieces and possibly all of her writing?
It's also my favorite. I don't think that I can succinctly explain what's going on. This does take place in like the very brief moment where Palamides finally touches Ianthe Nibirius's corpse that she's piloting around. During that kind of battle on, what is that planet? Is it New Row?
I think it's New Row.
And so it's like a snap moment to everybody else. For Ianthe and Palamedes, they are doing this long mental battle for the body of Nibirius Turn. And throughout it, they're having this discussion of what does it mean to be a blended soul? What does it mean to kind of be a soul in this universe?
Sonia, Josh, we are so overwhelmingly thrilled that your goldfish-like memory meant you were willing to join us here again today. What was your big picture take on The Unwanted Guest?
I had so much fun. I somehow missed all of these like short story pieces when I read and reread the main series. And so it's just been like just a thrill to get to read them with you guys. It is so absurd and just makes me realize what a great writer Tamsin is, how much she mixes these weird metaphors and hilarious moments and like insane stage play together with real plot and things where it's not just all absurdist. Some is you're actually figuring things out. It brought me back to every kind of piece of absurdist literature I've ever read. And I don't think I have more to say. I just had so much fun with it.
Oh, Sonia, you and I are quite similar, so I suppose it's not surprising that we had quite similar experiences here. I think part of it was that actually the first time I read, like, Gideon, I don't think that first short story had been published. And that when I initially downloaded Harrow, I'm not sure As Yet Unsent was included in the back materials of the Kindle, but it's been updated. So the thing was, I didn't look for The Unwanted Guest, even though I'm pretty sure it came out with Nona when Nona came out, because it's like buried there behind all the acknowledgments and praise section that I just like, you know, I literally end at 97% of every Kindle book I've ever ended. This one just delighted me in every possible way. And I think specifically this insight of being able to simultaneously do all this absurdist humor and also like all of these different styles and then still get really like niche important details to you is very impressive.
Totally.
Josh, what was your take?
I think unlike As Yet Unsent, I liked this one like right away. Like As Yet Unsent took me a while, I think like a few read-throughs to understand and like. This one I liked immediately. And I liked it immediately because of like, yeah, you have this like absurd play going on, but it's like chock full of world building, which was really cool. Like the nature of the soul, what it means to be a lictor, all that is like explored in this short story.
It goes really deep. You guys, I had a really kind of chaotic time writing this script for this one.
It didn't show.
So I wrote it all out and then I was like, this is 15 or 20 pages. This is longer than if we just read the whole thing out loud. So I went back and edited it down. Then I edited it up and then I edited it down again. And then last night, I insisted on reading the entire thing out loud to my husband doing different voices. And discovered like 30 more things that I'm like pissed that I didn't include. There's so much there to uncover. Marie, do you have anything you want to add?
I think I'm just with you that I think that this is my favorite thing that I've read from Tamsin. There is so much payoff. It could seem kind of a little too absurd, a little too strange, a little too self-indulgent if you weren't digging into the world and aware of exactly all of the implications, shall we say.
Before we go too hard on it, we do actually have to do a meme watch. So, we've brought up several times now that clearly overarchingly, it's got homage to all of the great theater of the absurd writers. It's got homage to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and Waiting for Godot and everything by Ionesco, right? That's there. But there's also a lot of other things. And I am 1000% certain that I am missing several. So the two most obvious allusions is that Dulcinea literally quotes from Hamlet, and later in that same scene, Palamedes quotes from what turns out to be the Book of Daniel. It's that shit where you look at it and you're like, that's a quote, but I'm not, Christian, so I had to Google it.
And it's funny because in that moment, it says as if he was reciting something, and to me, I thought it was him reciting what she had written in her letter, because she said that she described herself in these insane ways and sent it to him, and he enjoyed that or whatever. And I thought he was reciting them back. And instead, it's the Book of Daniel. So proof that Hannah and I grew up in the same household without enough literary Christian allusions.
The other one, this one is almost certainly not a deliberate allusion, but anytime someone says anything like, I hope that hasn't awakened anything in me, it makes me think of Dean Pelton from Community and his deep fetish for Dalmatians. Yeah, anyway.
Well, I missed that in Community, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a deep cut. Anyone else wanna hit one?
The 5 minutes to midnight I thought was really interesting. The 5 minutes to midnight, 2 minutes to midnight, right? That's like the doomsday clock. Like basically how close are we to nuclear apocalypse?
Okay, I'm glad you went there too. Obviously, there's also a moment when straight up Ianthe says, "That's all, folks," and it, like, especially in the context of this absurdist humor, was just like beautiful, needed to happen. One of them really should have run into a tunnel, and then the other one should have run into it, realized it was a tunnel painted on a wall. Like, it was there.
As long as we're talking about like the homage to absurdist theater, I think it's really interesting that they have this Socratic dialogue set up.
I am convinced that that is alluding to something else as well. Like, the Socratic dialogue is a really interesting structure, but there's something about the really fucking weird, stilted way that Palamedes is talking. It reminded me of Shakespeare again, and I couldn't tell if in A Midsummer Night's Dream, there's all of these rough artisans that are like putting on a play, and the whole joke is that they're dumb. And there was something very weird about Palamedes talking that reminded me of that. There's something weird happening there.
The way I kind of read that was like, time is weird when they're in there.
And maybe they're quoting themselves again?
Yeah, they've had this argument over and over again. Or they've talked about this topic.
Oh, I like that.
That's really interesting.
When you say Socratic dialogue, what do you mean by that?
It's specifically a teaching method in which you do not instruct students. You ask them questions for them to find their meaning themselves. So you aren't giving information, you are asking.
Totally.
And it only works as a dialogue. You can't just be like, is the soul permeable? Then when they say something, you say, okay, so given that, would you say it is malleable? Okay, we'll give it, you know, so it's this back and forth that Palamedes and Ianthe are doing. Well, okay, the current is about to go up, so places, people. And as the lights begin to dim, we will ask our audience to keep their phones out and on as we present Season 2 Interstitial episode, Much Wanted Guests. Act 3. 5 minutes to midnight. All right, so I already told you that initially when I wrote this, I tried to do a legit plot summary and realized that it was a losing battle because there are too many details. I do not know which pieces are important, which pieces are entirely aesthetic, or if there's any difference between the two, because I am convinced that many of the aesthetic details are wildly important. So we're going to do a semi-broad summary and just jump in at any point. It's just going to be chaos. I think we should lean into the chaos.
Yes.
Disclaimer over. The Unwanted Guest is entirely constructed as a play, operating within the mind/spirit space. I think we can get into this because I actually think it's a weird question where they are. But the mind of Ianthe within the dead-ass body of her one-time cavalier, Nibirius Term. And Palamedes has infiltrated Nibirius' body, as Marie told us, and has been going round after round fighting with Ianthe. But we've come to some sort of denouement. Ianthe's bored. She's giving Palamedes an ultimatum. They will go one last round, and whoever wins takes the whole enchilada. Scene 1. The action opens on a funeral. There's a parade of gaudily masked mourners who go past a coffin draped in flowers with a tray of meat on it. They each take a piece of meat and lean in to kiss or feed before passing on. Why do you think this scene opens this way? Like, this whole play opens in this funeral.
What you do first to become a lictor is you have to do a consumption. You literally have to eat part of your cavalier.
Yeah.
They're all feeding the corpse, right? Or the person in the place of the corpse. Like Ianthe is in the coffin, right? And they're maybe feeding and or kissing. Wild aesthetic.
Me, the Catholic thinking of this, it could be like a really creepy allusion to like communion.
Yeah, there's a little bit of one by one.
And I think there's also something in the context of lictorhood, eating a piece of meat is actually brought up several times in this with respect to the lictor process, but Palamides thinks about this and then thinks better of it. And so I kind of like that also in the lictor concept.
He rejects it.
The last mourner is Palamides Sextus in a broken wooden mask, and he waits until the coast is clear before reaching into the coffin. But Ianthe Tridentarius grabs his arm from her place as the dead corpse and says, "You're fucked, my lad." And that's the end of scene 1.
Which is
I will say
so
one
great.
weird thing, though. Actually, her face is covered in bloody kisses, which almost suggests that, like, what the mourners have been doing is kissing her as opposed to feeding her or eating it themselves, but maybe all these are as one. I don't know. And I like this thing of, like, the indelible mark of where these other people have been.
If this is a metaphor for lictorhood, it's interesting that Ianthe is in the coffin.
Ooh,
That kind
good
of
point.
implies that, like, when you have to murder someone who's really close to you, does that mean that you're already dead yourself, like, morally speaking?
Or does it take part of them with you?
Like a judgment on lictorhood, and that's the reason why Palamides doesn't want to do it.
Well, and there's also a comment that they make to Harrow in Harrow the Ninth about how she hasn't done anything because she hasn't finished the lictor process. She isn't helping out Gideon. She has made herself Gideon's mausoleum. And it's like, yes, but in a way, all of the lictors have.
Yeah.
The, like, conflation of who is the corpse, right? The whole thing is looking for Naberius's corpse. So, like, the very first thing we learn is Ianthe is, in fact, Naberius's corpse.
A little on the nose.
Yeah. Well, but I like that all these things are, like, existing simultaneously.
I think that probably is, like, the most important thing is, like, they're looking for the body of Naberius Turn this whole time, but they're never going to find it. Looking for the body of Naberius Turn means you're actually looking for the soul of Naberius Turn. And when it comes down to it, we're, like, shuffling the coffins. I think that is literally just a distraction. It's not anything, but we're shuffling the coffins the whole time because you're meant to be playing the shell game looking for Naberius Turn in the coffins. But the only body we ever see in a coffin is Ianthe.
Literally, the first scene is just dripping with metaphor and illusion.
Oh, 100%.
There's one more with Palamides' mask, because he is not a whole entity himself right now. He's all beat up from these constant rounds, like going round after round with Ianthe. He's not a whole person himself because his soul has to reside in Cam's body and share it with her. And then also, that was the first part of, like, how Cam carried him around, was this shattered piece of skull.
I like that a lot. There's something very fucking interesting about the fact, though, that so later we'll see Palamides in a moment. He's going to enter wearing a suit that's all torn to bits, and it's like partially burned, and it's real fucked up. However, Tamsin's very careful to tell us that Palamides himself bears no marks, that he doesn't look like he has. So all of this damage is surface level. All of this damage is, like, where everybody else can see it. And actually, when it comes to he himself, I feel like he knows who he is and where he stands.
It's a little bit of a theater of him being damaged and being attacked, and, like, it's the appearance and what he's dressed in rather than himself.
I also took it as an illusion of Cam's body, which is the suit that he is wearing,
that feels real.
Is torn
severely
apart.
damaged.
I love that, actually. And that goes very nicely with, the way that these souls are always merging. All right, so let's keep going. Scene 2. Palamides enters the same room, now empty. He is wearing this suit that's totally shredded, as we said. Ianthe, dressed as a butler, welcomes him in very formally, takes his card, which is a skeletal hand, and says, "If you'd be so good as to wait here." Before we keep going, this is actually the thing that I think I understand the least about literally the entire thing. I have a really hard time, like, deriving meaning from the fact that Ianthe is dressed as a butler and playing the role of a butler, and in a moment will be dressed as a French maid playing the role of a French maid.
I feel like this is Pal's influence a little bit.
You think so?
A little bit, because he's the one where it's like Nona asks him what he thinks is sexy, and he's like, those little uniforms that nurses wear. I feel like he'd be into a French maid outfit. That was, like, always the first thing that I thought of.
No. Don't besmirch my man, pal. No.
I feel like
I don't think it's besmirching. I think they're great too.
To me, I don't know why I thought it was more a sign that Ianthe is playing all roles in her brain, that she is the person handing you something, the person taking it. She is all of these aspects, and also everything is a farce. And so it's taken up to the nth degree. But I do like the idea that this might have been from Pal, because that's pretty funny.
Pal has this really, really interesting monologue here about pseudo-civility and linguistics. He's talking about the phrase, if you'd be so good as to wait here, and the ways in which anytime you use like an if clause, it implies a then. So what you're really saying is, if you'd be so good as to wait here, then I will do what you want, or then I will not harm you, or that, you know what I mean? There's always kind of like an implied kick in the butt on the other side, and it's not truly polite. So I like this because Ianthe here is playing the role of the butler, this very polite, oh yes, sir, may I take your card? And at the same time, much later, Pal will say that he's spent enough time with Ianthe that he would never, ever, predict that she would do something polite. And she's like, thank you. She inclines her head.
That's a good point.
I would never make the mistake of thinking that you would do something decent and polite. So I like the idea that even here, this politeness is false. This politeness is forced, and there's violence on the other end of it.
And that she's still in charge, even when she's dressed as a serving person, that she is the one who is controlling the situation, because you are required to, by these politeness and social graces, she's controlling the scene.
I like the way that the colors are a hint already, because Pal is wearing a purple tie. He's wearing a gray suit, which gray, right, is his house colors, but he's also wearing a purple tie. He's already why is Calamity's wearing a purple tie? Hot, right? Then as Ianthe comes in dressed as a maid, she is dusting with a purple feather duster.
Mm-hmm.
But also, there's another little illusion here, is that the master will see him in the almond room.
Yes. What was that?
It's the amygdala.
What?
That's a long way to go for that.
It's shaped like an almond.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
They're in the brain, right? They're in your mind. So you're going to go to where the emotions are.
I guess.
Because I highlighted this and I was like, yeah, I mean, it's where the emotions are, and also where the most visceral emotions are, the most fear, anger, automatic.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting. I like that a lot. I went to cyanide and nowhere else, and I was like, I don't know where to go from here. It was nothing.
I feel like Pal was, he was talking about Ianthe, I felt like, in this monologue. I think he says the iron fist or something wrapped in the glove of civility or something. That just felt like
glove.
Ianthe's character down to its core.
And then he corrects himself. He says an iron fist wrapped in a silk glove, or in this case, a gold one, like a golden hand wrapped. I think you're completely dead on. Great insight. I guess the master of the house is actually going to see him, and so a crew of robed and hooded figures come in to set the stage. They set up 7 coffins on end in a loose semicircle, and they set a chaise-longue in the middle, and Ianthe, dressed as herself, comes in to chat with Calamities. And I actually thought that this was interesting because it's clear that the costumes are important and tell you something. She's dressed in leather pants and a shirt that's deeply unbuttoned. And she also has a lictor robe over her shoulder. And she's got a little clutch bag. So Sonia is having a moment. Tell me about it.
That feels like something Nibirius would wear. Is leather pants and a deep V. Right? He's got to show off his abs a little bit, and then she's got the clutch.
I also think that it's a nod to a little bit of a meme of Ianthe is there's the fanfic meme of Draco in leather pants. I think this is Ianthe as Draco in leather pants.
I'm not familiar.
Sorry,
I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fanfic idea, right?
I could see that for sure. The other thing that I noted is there's actually in Gideon the Ninth, there's a part where Corona is dressed in very tight pants, and Gideon is nom nom nom. And so I also kind of like the idea. I first thought of Babs, but I also like the idea that what we're talking here is that Ianthe has always been a composite person. I love the idea that souls mix when they're close together, but I also like it to some degree as a metaphor for humanity and the ways in which we leave our thumbprints on, and we leave our little bloody kisses all over the face of everybody we've met.
I like that too.
You were asking about my initial thoughts on Unwanted Guest, and one of the things I forgot to say was that I feel like all of these pieces of writing are feel like Tamsin trying to figure out how she thinks about relationships and how people combine and touch and don't. And so I think it's even more like, I don't know, stark when it's literally souls melding or whatever, becoming a person. But even things like I hang out with people too much, you pick up their mannerisms. I have like not memories, but kind of pseudo memories of stories my husband has said 100 times. And you have your own mental image of them. So there are ways that you bleed into each other's lives very directly, even just by being close.
Yes. To go along with this is clear, like this is almost sort of a haunting. And there are people who just kind of haunt you forever, for better or for worse. Not always terrible. So here's the thing about Ianthe. Ianthe's fucking bored. Not enjoying herself is the one thing she cannot tolerate. And so she proposes a final game. Nibirius's body is in one of these 7 identical coffins. Palamides can ask 5 questions about anything other than the coffins themselves. And then he has to guess which one holds the bouffant-haired, heavily lip-balmed prize. And if he guesses correctly, he wins. If not, he's out on his ass once and for all. And where will he go then with Camilla's body all fucked up and bloody?
Her spleens aren't one of the nicer spleens, I will say. It's so bitchy. Her spleen, what is it? Spleens? She doesn't have multiple spleens. Her spleen is not one of the nicer spleens.
Yeah.
I would also like to, this is so vicious and actually does, affect Pal, and he tries to cover it up. But this is, almost advice from the beginning that he ought to have been poking at harder, meaner topics from the beginning, which he only gets into by the end, basically. So I have a question for you all. Why are there 7 coffins? Because 7 is a number we actually typically haven't played with. I don't know if you have any theories. I have 0 theories about this.
I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that the 8-fold word is wrong and there shouldn't be 8, or there should only be 7 or something. Or that there is an 8-fold word, but there's 7 coffins and Ianthe is the 8th piece.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Okay, I like that. The 8-fold word, 7 coffins, and Ianthe, which is the correct guess. Okay, I like it. I think we should run with it.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Sure.
So Palamides wastes a question asking if Ianthe will play fair. I actually don't think this is a wasted question. I think this is informative. She's amazing. She immediately is like, I never do. 4 questions left, which I think is informative. And also, separately, she also goes back on it later. So Pal needs a moment to think. And so he starts doing this thing that is really interesting. So Tamsin puts in all these, at the end of each of these scenes, Palamides walks downstage towards the audience and the curtain falls behind him, leaving him alone with the audience and with a voice that over the course of a couple of conversations will establish itself as Dulcinea original flavor.
So exciting. Just fucking brilliant. I had no idea who it was. I spent the whole first half of this writing notes in the margins about who it could be. I get more and more snippets of dialogue.
Who did you think it was?
I was like, is it the part of Cam that lives in Pal from them being so close all the time, right? Is it Cam talking about it and then the Cam comes back in? I was like, who the fuck? What is this? Pal, it's Cam, it's Pal, it just goes all the way down. And then I figured it out after an embarrassingly long time and got very excited.
Literally same.
Yeah.
It took me very deep into this to be like, oh, it's Dulcinea. And 2 lines later, the character name switches from voice to Dulcinea. And I was like, yeah, okay.
I beat it by
What about you, Josh? Was this something you picked up on right away?
I don't remember. I think so. I think I kind of figured out it was Dulcinea pretty soon. I have a question. Do we think that Ianthe is actually bored? Because Dulcinea starts explaining that everything that Ianthe does is kind of a front. She's
it's on
constantly
purpose.
Playing a role. And I'm wondering, was she actually bored or did she feel like she was losing?
She felt like she was losing and she needed to force it.
I think that's insightful, or at least felt like she was losing and needed to bring it to a head.
All of this I think is true. I also think it's true. I think the vast majority of the time when Ianthe affects ennui, it is an affectation. So I agree with this. I don't understand her motives. I legitimately do think that she does not know where the body of Nibirius Turn is, that she's not playing a game here. So my other theory is that she actually realizes at some point going round and round with Palamides that she does not know the answer. And she's like, fuck, I actually... for me, for my life and knowledge, I actually need to figure out this answer.
And she's banking on Palamides not figuring it out, because then all the coffins are empty.
But also using him as in the Socratic dialogue a little bit to figure it out for herself.
Totally.
Yes, like a sounding board. Yeah, I think this is, sorry, I'm really, really glad you brought this up because I think it's a fascinating question. The other thing that I want us to just like think about a little bit, although this is not something that ever gets established and maybe is not important, I would like to know how long Palamedes has been having conversations with Dulcinea to think about things. Is this something that's happening while he's in Cam? Or is this something that is only happening now that he's in Ianthe? And if so, why? Why is Dulcinea coming to him here and now?
Yeah.
Because you could buy maybe that like a little bit of Dulcinea has always connected itself to Palamedes and there was always a link there. But, you know, is this just a moment of crisis? Is this, I think it's something to think about.
It's super interesting she's here, and I know we're going to talk about it later.
Yeah, I have questions.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of questions about how death works.
Implications and world building.
World building.
So the other thing I fucking love is like Palamedes, bless him, is the smartest person in the world and the greatest necromancer of his generation. But he does need to occasionally be reminded about like humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He's a very gentle, generous person, but he's sitting there trying to work out the logic of the game. And Dulcinea is like, it's not a logic puzzle, you idiot. It's all about psychology. And Palamedes is like, ick.
Oh, there's some great thing. She goes, yeah, all facts are psychological, like, which I thought was, it was so interesting. Like, yeah, it says the solution is factual, not psychological. I don't need or frankly want a story about Ianthe's relationship with her mother. I need a number 1 to 7 because all facts are psychological. So it's such a great way to be like, no, everything is made up, and that makes it just as valid and important.
What do you guys think about that as a scientist?
I 1000% agree.
Dear listener, on today's call, we have 3 scientists and a computer scientist. That's right. I don't count you as a real scientist.
I'm not. I'm with you.
She's the smart one. But yeah, so Marie, tell us more about that.
Whether or not you will accept a fact as a fact, or whether or not you will go looking for something. Well, let's put it this way. We know that as scientists, you don't do science communication from facts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Exactly.
You do science communication from emotion because all facts are psychological.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Totally.
Okay.
100% agree. I mean, look at Galileo, right?
Yep.
And also the way that you interpret things, and I would argue, and this is a huge fucking part of what we learn here, the questions that you ask are psychological. The first thing that Palamedes asks is something that's really comfortable for him. And that's, I think, a problem with science is sometimes you ask the questions that like feel like the right next question, which maybe is not actually the most useful. You actually got to push farther. So let's hit scene 3 because Palamedes asks his question. It's his first question, but of course it's question number 2 because he asked if she was going to play fair. He asks, do you believe in the permeability of the soul? And the hooded and masked attendants rearrange the coffins to form kind of a horseshoe of couches. They bring in cushions, purple cushions, an ivy crown for Ianthe, goblets of wine. Palamedes politely declines the wine, and there's actually kind of a great back and forth here. It might be one of my favorite things. So, like, Palamedes basically says he's not drinking because he's dead and the wine doesn't exist. And Ianthe says it's all the better for it. False things have a piquancy which the real can never match. And then
so many good
she says it's all about what makes your tongue tingle. And she asks if Pal's ting ever tingled while he was alive. And he tries to correct her, and she's like, yeah, that's what I said. So, I mean, one, I really fucking love this concept that false things are always brighter and more interesting, and, that sometimes the fake thing can seem more real than the real thing. What I'm saying is we all live in the Matrix.
We all live in the Matrix, for sure. As the resident computer scientist can confirm. I love that Ianthe just is it just feels like she's trying to push Pal's buttons, just trying to say something like a little risque. Just, does your tongue ever tingle? And he's just like, you actually said it wrong. And she's like, okay, yeah, it wasn't the point, but yeah, keep going, bud.
It's funny too, because for me, so I didn't realize this at all until I was reading it out loud. Because I always read it as, did your tongue ever tingle while you were alive? Palamedes says, tongue ever tingle? She says, that's what I said. But she doesn't say that. She says, ting ever tungled. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to call it. The closest I have is spoonerism, where you would flop the first letter, but this is flopping like the middle vowel sound. Again, I feel like it's like just a little bit of an illusion that like things are missable, things are mixed up, things are mushy down here.
Yeah, facts are psychological.
Nah. So the writing here is fascinating. We've gotten into it, but there's definitely this like Socratic teaching thing going on. Palamedes is asking questions, Ianthe is answering as the student, and Palamedes is encouraging to grow farther.
When Ianthe answers, it's always in quotes, like she's
Isn't
reciting
that fucking
something.
weird?
Oh, I didn't notice
It's very much
that.
like she's reciting something. And that cuts off once she gets bored of playing this part. Because basically, as soon as they move into this, they start to play parts. Later, they'll actually have an argument as Ianthe and Palamedes, but in this first part, it's very much student-teacher. And the language is really stilted and weird. Again, there was something about it that reminds me of the fools in Midsummer Night's Dream. So here's the thing. Ianthe does not believe the soul is permeable or divisible. However, she does believe it's malleable. Because when a revenant is formed, it retains characteristics from its earlier life, which means it can be permanently deformed. So Palamedes points out that if the soul can be permanently changed, then they should consider the possibility it can be diminished. Those 4 sentences I said took 5 or 6 pages, right? It's a pretty substantial amount of conversation they have there. And it is enough for Ianthe to get pissed. So she basically, I think she throws off her fucking ivy crown, which is another very Greek coded, Socratic, I feel it. Anyway, she's tired of the pseudo-intellectual play they're putting on. So she switches back to Ianthe Classic and says the soul obviously cannot be diminished because in lictorhood, the Cavalier's soul is a perpetual source of energy and therefore not being consumed in any way. And that means that it cannot be diminished. So what do you all think about this?
I'm on Pal's side. Pal makes the argument, well, maybe it's just you can't tell. We haven't been on a time scale where you could ever tell. Maybe it's a source of energy that is so huge that you can't even tell that it's being used up even over 10,000 years. But it is being diminished.
So I love that, the half-life argument. And I love that Ianthe's immediate response is, I'm sorry, your best argument is that it could happen in secret? But it could.
Yeah. It's interesting that they refer to the soul as a battery. It makes it seem like there's energy and movement of the soul, and there's a potential energy of holding the soul in the wrong body. And maybe that's where the energy derives from.
Huh. I was thinking of it more like a rechargeable battery, or how in cars, as the wheels turn, it recharges the battery. And so it's something as the necromancer uses the body, it somehow feeds back, and then it's a closed system there. I don't know. None of the math ever works out. The whole concept of perpetual from two things that are not perpetual, it's impossible inherently. I don't know. I'm always stuck on it. I'm always willing to accept it, but I also don't think that it never makes sense. So it makes sense that Pal is poking at it.
Yeah. I mean, all of this is true. I like the idea of if you have it as a car battery recharging, this closed system, that also kind of leads into this idea that the necro may be giving back to the Cav. It's a more closed system than you think, that the Cav personality may be bleeding through, but you may actually... How diminished is diminished? How dead is dead? And are these calves really gone? I really like the argument they have here. And I also would like to take this opportunity to tell Josh, firstly, hi, I love you. But
Love
secondly,
you too,
ever since you were on for the As Yet Unsent thing, and you declared that they had an argument was the best euphemism ever, I've started using that in real life on a regular basis. So anyway.
They have an argument.
They have an argument. So basically, Pal goes, what if it's just super slow decay? Ianthe goes, your best argument is it could happen in secret. And then Ianthe goes, look, you've never eaten a soul and I have. I know more than you do. And Pal's like, that's a dumb argument. You can't just be you know more and then discount everything I say. And I love this little play yard back and forth bullshit. However, I actually think there's some interesting points here. I think Ianthe has a point. To some extent, personal knowledge is relevant, and having, literally Ianthe has more knowledge about this than Palamedes does. I also think I have a problem with Palamedes' analogy that he uses for the diminishing of the soul. So he talks about how a sculptor could take a lump of rock and reshape it into something else, but in the process, things are carved away. But that doesn't take into account something like clay, where you actually could permanently mold something into a different shape without diminishing it. I think there's a fundamental discrepancy here. It doesn't have to be diminished for it to be molded.
Well, here's the thing. If you do mold clay, you still are diminishing it. It's not as dramatic as the rock, but it's still, some of it is sticking to your hands.
Yes,
It
that
is
I
still
will believe
diminished.
that would be a better analogy, right? Because you're like little bits and you almost don't realize they're there, but like it is actually, you know, contributing and changing. I just think that diminishing is almost not the argument here. The argument is about miscibility, and the argument is about the degree of permanent change that something can undergo. But either way, Ianthe declares the debate over. So Pal walks downstage to speak with the voice, who says, it's cute. Palamides is like, that went great. And the voice is like, not going to be able to compliment sandwich this, honey. It was not good.
That feels like a meme watch to me. I feel like that counts. Compliment sandwich.
That actually should be in meme watch. You're totally right. So Dulcinea says, she's letting you pull her into long, complicated debates so that you feel like you're getting the upper hand, and points out, like exactly as Josh did earlier, that Ianthe is a princess of Ida. You should not be underestimating her. She's actually worked her whole life to be underestimated, to be in Corona's shadow. She's really good at it. And she's good at giving you what you want in an antagonistic way. She actually says something like this with Babs later, where she always treated him with like violence and poison, and he lapped it up. But that was actually like a cleaner relationship than the one that he had with Corona. Ianthe is good at this antagonism that puts her in a position of power and makes you leave feeling like you won when you did not. So the voice suggests that Palamides try to ask Ianthe questions, because everything here is Ianthe.
Except the part that's nefarious.
Yes. What Dulcinea is asking him to do here is the psychological equivalent of soul meshing, is trying to actually put yourself in somebody else's mind and act like them and feel that space like authentically.
Empathy.
Is that why it's a play? It's like method acting.
Oh, that's interesting, though. That's actually okay. So the fact that this is a play is fascinating to me. And the only other place we've seen like plays referred to is the River Bubble, where Harrow's directing a play. And there's something funking weird about like, where are they in space? And presumably their bodies that we're seeing are like manifestations of their souls. But that means they're not. I don't fucking know. You know what? Retracted. The coffins are now all in a different order when Palamides comes back in. As Marie said, I think this is just like, you know, find the lady kind of like shell game. But at the same time, I'm stuck on it, so we can talk about it later. Okay, Pal asks question number 3. Do you regret the murder of Nibirius Turn? And the robed figures all slap their coffins once. And Ianthe says, ooh.
Record scratch, freeze frame. Like...
The attendants take some of the coffins and stack them too high to make these like barriers or podiums facing one another. And in the same vein of like these roles that we've been playing, the butler, the Socratic teacher-student pair, Palamides starts playing the role of the prosecutor. You're not answering the question, like slaps both hands on the top.
Oh, that's a meme watch, right?
I guess it kind of
probably.
is.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this is not only does Palamides start playing this role, but they notice, both of them notice. Ianthe goes, I have to know, why did you do that? And Palamides is like, I don't know. And then they have an argument. So Ianthe basically says that the Cav's job is to die for the necromancer. Palamides is like, no. The Cav's job is to protect the necromancer. The only thing that Babs's death protected was Ianthe's ambitions. And she says, I am my ambitions.
This is the most insightful thing we've gotten from Ianthe ever.
Yes! I thought that was like dead on. I thought that was actually really, really meaningful. I think that's how she sees herself, which actually is fucking depressing. If your only sense of worth is like your goals,
you'd never achieve them.
Oh,
I actually love what comes out of this, where Palamides says like, shopkeepers must love to see you coming because you never check the price tag. And Ianthe's like, yeah, the cost is the cost. Mm-hmm. And then it comes up later because he asks her, would you have taken Corona? And points out that like the cost isn't the cost. And I like it because it points into like a lot of conspiracy theories that we have, that like Corona is Ianthe's goal. Corona could never have been her cavalier ever for this process. She can't fuse with Corona because Corona is the goal. The purpose of her becoming a lictor is for Corona's goal.
Yeah, to like place Corona as king, or to place, but just like the entire stratagem is about where Corona ends up. Like that is the success point.
Yeah.
You can't afford it. Which is also, I mean, so we'll talk about it then as well, because I think it's an interesting boundary question. So instead of talking about Corona, we talk about Babs. And Ianthe says that Babs was a tepid domestic, profoundly boring soul.
Oh,
but he was loyal. loyal to a fault, but not loyal to a fault to Ianthe, loyal to Corona. And they talk a little bit about how calves are matched on the third. They're literally assigned at birth.
Conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory.
Okay. Go.
What do Bab's eyes look like?
They're purple.
They're like blue and brown flecked.
Yes. We don't see anybody else with eyes of a couple of different colors. The only thing that we know about eyes is that you switch colors if you do something like the Cav Necro Lictor thing. And then when Paul is born, the eye color is like a middle ground between the two of them. But when Ianthe is still fighting with Babs at the beginning, it's like both colors in the eye color. And so my conspiracy theory that is not completely original, this is very definitely informed by the internet, is that the third does some sort of weird fucked up soul stamping thing to ensure that their calves are the perfect calf.
Huh.
That is fucking unhinged.
Like they say they put the blood on his lips. Like it's like you have, like they've chosen, like from this bloodline, you have to be the calf. So if you aren't going to have the talent, we will manipulate you somehow so that you have the talent. And so that Babs might actually have like a bit of a soul melange himself. Because that's just the way the third does stuff.
Yeah, there's a line in here where Ianthe says we would have fixed him if he wasn't good enough.
She also says it's the only safe way to do things. And if you take what she's describing at face value, that's insane. The idea that like you pick someone and then they just become the perfect calf because they have to. That's not fucking safe. So I like this idea that there are backup mechanisms, both potentially physically and also like soul-wise. It's interesting that the blood is put on their lips because we also know that eating is part of the lictor process and probably what the third brought to the lictor process.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's really, really wild. The other thing that I am stuck on, and I don't know what to make of it, is that Palamedes consistently calls him Nibirius Turn, which is his name. And Ianthe says something, I don't have the direct quote here, but something like, it's so weird to hear someone call him Turn.
Like maybe taking him seriously instead of calling him Babs.
But I just think it's odd. There's so many ways that we address one another in these books that I think it actually causes a lot of difficulty for new readers or new listeners, because you could call someone the third, or you could call them Turn, or you could call them Nibirius, or you could call them Babs, right? It's all one person. But Turn is his, as far as we know, is his actual name. But it made me wonder if, I have no idea. I just think it's an odd little thing. What Palamedes takes away from this really interesting question of how cavaliers are chosen on the third is you literally knew him since birth and you do not regret killing him. And Ianthe says, no.
It's just such a fucking bitch.
She's wild. She's just wild.
Palamedes heads back to his little curtain corner to chat with Dulcie/The Voice. He is pretty icked out that Ianthe saw Nibirius as nothing more than a perfect tool.
Cam would have laughed.
Dulcie's delightful. She actually, you get a lot of the pieces of what you get actually from her letter in the study of Dr. Sex. She really is this character she's goofy, she's silly, she's sassy, and she's stuck in a position where she's supposed to be a dying rose. I just can't imagine it.
Makes sense why Pal fell in love, right? Like a total disregard for not only what the world has decided you are and also what you can physically do. She's just going to be who she is despite it all and laugh at like a perfect tool.
Which is the perfect description for Nibirius in every possible way. So Palamedes is standing there thinking, and he pulls out a cigarette and he lights it and he starts like smoking. And Dulcinea is like, I didn't know you smoked. And Palamedes is like, I don't. But there's really no time to think about that because we got to head back in there for another question. So scene 5, coffins rearranged again. Question number 4. Back when we were at Canaan House, what did you make of Gideon Nav? Ianthe's like, what? And Palamedes says something like, well, I had a question to spare, so I thought we'd just like take it up with something random. And Ianthe goes, that was unmistakably trash talk. It's far too late in the game to become interesting, Sextus. The attendants rearrange the coffins to form the bounds of a dueling floor, and they bring Ianthe an ornate rapier. Palamedes politely declines the rapier offered to him. I love this too because they didn't expect it. Like the attendant has to step in instead and is like, I don't know what to do here. But I love that Pal is refusing to play this game. Politely. I also kind of wanted to ask you what you think about all these coffin rearrangements. Not about the like, every time you come back on stage, there are different coffins. In the first question, which is about the permeability of the soul, it's set up like couches. In the second question, which is, do you regret Babs's murder? We get this like prosecutorial, two podiums thing. And here, what did you think of Gideon Nav turns into like a dueling floor?
I think that you like hit it on the head, is that the couch is the Socratic dialogue. And then you go to an accusatory tone, and they're both surprised by all of a sudden they're in this prosecutorial courtroom kind of a thing. I don't think either one of them expect that to kind of happen. And now that he's starting to ask questions that might touch, like I think you nailed it, like that might touch on Nibirius's opinions, now we're where Nibirius would be comfortable.
Yeah, I think like in a real play, right, you rearrange the furniture, so to speak, to set the scene. I think that's what's happening here, just with coffins instead of like 2x4s and plywood.
Yeah, which incidentally is like, it's something I really respect in certain types of plays, like black box theater plays, the ability to take basically just boxes and inform you about what a scene feels like, even though you don't have like elaborate set dressing. I like this idea that potentially this dueling floor is mostly about Bab's opinion. But what ends up happening is that each of the hooded attendants face off against Ianthe while she's answering these questions of calamities. And every single one gets disqualified almost immediately for their shit form.
Yeah, and it reflects like Babs's duel with Gideon, right? She gets disqualified for punching him in the stomach.
Yes. And it is specifically like one of them even gets disqualified for starting before the bell. Mm-hmm. It's not about how good you were at fighting. It's also about like knowing the rules.
Yeah.
So Ianthe says she was intrigued by Gideon. Everyone else was so scripted. Gideon was tugging visibly at her leash, very much not the brand. So much about her was off. Her sunglasses, her very obvious hots for Corona, her swordsmanship, which was too good to be a ninth cav, but not good enough for a real cav, her lack of dueling knowledge, and of course, the iconic line, she wandered around like she was the protagonist, and we were all there to give her something to look at.
Fucking love that. Thank you, Tamsin.
So here comes, I think, an interestingly critical question. Palamedes goes, when did you realize you underestimated Gideon? And Ianthe is like, no, I estimated her right from the beginning. She was, a hilarious moron, I think is her term.
Dope.
I don't think this informs the unwanted guest necessarily, but I'm actually interested in your opinion on Gideon. Like, to what degree is Ianthe underestimating here? And to what degree is Gideon someone who is good-hearted and good at swords?
I think Gideon is more insightful than she thinks she is. And I also think, I both think Ianthe sees her. I don't think Ianthe is missing parts of her. And Ianthe is still going to call her a dope. But I don't think anyone thinks she actually is. What were you going to say, Marie?
I think part of it is, too, is like at this point, if it were Ianthe answering, Ianthe has been hanging out with Kiriona.
Yeah.
And like being buddy-buddy with Kiriona. So at this point, Ianthe knows Gideon.
Yeah.
And has known her for months as probably her only friend.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is Ianthe just like trying to downplay something that...
Or it's Nibirius's opinion.
Yeah, and let's also admit that I think part of the point is that there isn't one or the other, right? That like things are melded.
Yeah.
Because I do think that Ianthe, among all of the people who were there at Canaan House, I could see Ianthe looking over and immediately being like, nope, that one's not right. Whereas we know the fourth house teens were like kind of scared of Gideon as this like silent nun.
Yep.
We know that even Magnus was like a little intimidated. So I don't think Gideon, Ianthe feels like Gideon wasn't fooling anyone. I bet Gideon fooled most people aside from Ianthe. And then Nibirius, when he saw her fight, was like, this is not right. So yeah. I could see this being everybody's. So Palamedes heads back into the corner of the ring with Coach Dulcie, and Dulcie quotes Hamlet. He says, is that from something? And she says, yes, it's complicated. We get the final details that confirm that the voice is Dulcinea, even though Palamedes can't totally trust it. Because he says, there's no way for you to have traveled here, even via the river. And he doesn't totally trust the situation until Dulcie quotes particulars from their letters to one another. So here are some things that Palamedes and Dulcie say to one another. And I want to send this straight to Josh because he was the one who brought this up earlier. So there's no way for you to have traveled here, even via the river. How are you here? Dulcie says, I gambled on the truth. Then I died. You died again? I'm not allowed to tell you. It's something awful in the old sense of the word. And now I'm not in the river and I won't ever be again.
Yeah. What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know if there's the thing that stuck out to me was like it was something awful in the old sense of the word, like full of awe, not necessarily
Yes.
bad.
Like awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the last time we see Dulce in the real books, she's like talking to Harrow, right? In her play.
As the bubble is collapsing around Harrow.
There's like a resurrection beast, and Gideon, original flavor, is fighting, and the other guys are like, okay, we got to go back that guy up.
So I was very interested in this phrase, I gambled on the truth.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the Harrow bubble, Dulcie stays behind because she wants Harrow to know the full truth, the truth unvarnished and unclean. And then Harrow gambles on that truth.
Yeah.
The secret is that Dulcie knows enough about puppeting to know that Harrow's body is not being puppeted.
There's
Right.
something with agency
Yeah, that's right.
in there.
what that we didn't get was where Dulcie goes from there. Right?
Yeah.
We don't know what happens to
100%.
her soul.
I think the only thing we get is we get it from here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he says he'll find her on the shore of the river, and she says, which shore?
Yeah.
So like this is a lot of like where my talking about like how Abigail talks about her heresy with the river. We think that there's something screwed up with the river. We talked a little bit about like, is the river flowing into an ocean? The river has two banks. The river has a depth. The river is maybe meeting something else. And so I think that whatever is going on is that basically Dulcie has gone beyond whatever the afterlife is that Jod has basically damned or screwed up. And that's part of how she has extra knowledge, because there is no veil.
Mm-hmm.
Can we take a moment for the obvious pun that I can't believe I didn't
Damned?
realize before of damned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got very excited about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has damned the river.
I like this too. So like this idea that Dulcinea is on the other bank of the river from the bank that we've seen and has acquired knowledge that she couldn't have had before, including Hamlet. And so Marie and I talked at one point about whether she's hanging out with some of the OG, like, is she hanging out with Cytherea there? Cytherea, who may actually have knowledge of pre-resurrection Earth and who would be the kind of person who would have
Not
on
Cytherea,
hand some
Cassie.
Hamlet quotes. Jesus.
Was
Cassiopeia.
like, okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
Cassiopeia. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, listeners. The question then becomes, okay, so like, let's say Dulcie makes it out of the bubble, crosses her fingers, and makes it to the other shore by, things unknown, and is hanging out with Cassiopeia there. Great. How does she come back to interface with Pal? And also, I would like to talk about the Russian nesting dolls of it all, because we've got Pal potentially inside of Nibirius's brain or inside of Ianthe's soul bubble.
It's metaphysics,
and we've got
man.
Dulcinea.
It's metaphysics. It doesn't matter like where it is actually. Everybody else
Stop asking
who
questions.
dies. Yeah, don't ask questions. Everybody else when they dies only has the choice of the river, really, except unless you can find a way to get beyond and then you don't come back. Like there is a veil that you don't get to cross until you are dead, and you don't get to tell people what it's like
On the other side.
I'm excited for however Tamsin's going to give us metaphors for what the river really is. Like, is it going to be that it was a river and God poked a hole in the bottom and things are like pouring through and those are the stoma? Or like, is it a river and it was dammed, or a river and like things moved? There's going to be more water-based metaphors, but it doesn't make sense yet.
Yeah, I agree.
And despite the fact that you're saying that you can't come back, but we know that Dulcinea is coming back in this sense. She's not allowed to tell everything, but she's saying some things. And we also suspect that Cassie has come back at least once to talk to Blood of Eden in some manner. So that's kind of interesting too, that there is transit to some degree.
Are we almost here? There's like the quote that like kills me where Pal says something like, merely by loving you, I added to your torments.
Yes, and also my agonies.
Again, fuck you, Tamsin. But he then asks if he can see Dulcie, and then he starts quoting the book of Daniel. And the thing is like, it's not that important, I think that it's from the book of Daniel. What is being described in that passage is an angel, is a heavenly messenger. That plus the fact that the kids call Aim and Nona, they call her the angel because they've misinterpreted something they've overheard. Angel is pretty much means messenger.
Oh, whoa. Yeah, that's super interesting.
This shows up in multiple places. This shows up in Philip Pullman as well. The idea that angels, this is a consistent phenomenon, this idea of angels as messenger.
And that's how you know what Hamlet is.
Yeah.
Because they're like kind of stewards of the old humanity and knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Okay, so he's describing an angel. And if that weren't in quotes, then we could say like, oh, then this is just Tamsin making an illusion. But the way it's written, do you guys have it up?
Yeah, it says both in parentheses beforehand, as if reciting, and then in quotes.
Yes.
And her body was like the chrysolite, and her face as the appearance of lightning, and her eyes as a burning lamp, and her arms, and all downward even to the feet, like in appearance of that of glittering brass. And then it just blacks out.
So it is something quoted. It's like actually Palamedes has gained and gleaned some sort of knowledge that I don't think he should ostensibly have otherwise. I also really appreciate that Tamsin, in her most Tamsinist sense, who sees memes as being similar to Shakespeare, as being similar to the Bible, immediately undercuts this because Dulcie immediately afterwards is like, was I cute?
And Pal returns, you're perfect.
But he says that she is perfect. Okay, I have a couple of notes here because I didn't know where to put them. There's something weird where Dulcinea says, at least we both got killed by the same person. And I had this moment where I was like, is that how they are connecting? Is that how Dulcinea's soul is connected to like, I mean, I may be going too deep on my fan theories. What Sonia and Josh don't know is that we just recorded our fan theories episode that will come out after this one.
Oh, fun.
But I'm stewing. I'm cooking.
Butter cook.
I don't know. I feel like there's something where when we're talking about like the permeability of souls or whatever, of like even the fact that they didn't necessarily like ever meet in real life, but simply the fact that they were spending so much emotional energy on each other that like those three are entangled. And I think it's really poignant that like pretty much right after this, Cam and Pal decide to be Paul. And one of the things that Cam says before they do it is, will she know us in the river?
Will she recognize us, our closest friend, our other like part? Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly what Pal says, but he says something like basically like, yeah, of course she'll know us. Like,
how could she not?
And I think part of that reassurance or part of that confidence from him is specifically because of everything that he's gone through here, fighting with Ianthe and learning about like the permeability and the miscibility of souls, of that when they merge and they become this new entity, they will still be recognizable to Dulcie because Dulcie sees them.
They will always have pieces of themselves and it'll just be joined. I think this is actually informs the fact that they choose to become Paul. They obviously had this plan for a long time, but like I think this is like the final thing where he's like, I have learned. This was an important piece for me to learn theoretically in order to make this happen. All right, let's talk about scene 6 because the coffins are yet again rearranged and we are back for our final question.
Pew, pew, pew.
The question is, if Babs had been killed early, or if he had died by some misadventure.
Ate a bad clam.
Yep. Would Ianthe have sacrificed her sister to become a lictor?
I'm so sorry. The eating a bad clam sounds ridiculous, but honestly, Vibrio parahemolyticus, not anything to play around with. I risk it all the time for raw oysters, and I really shouldn't. Just FYI. Quick little...
No, oysters are worth it.
This is the baseline theory on why Judaism bans pork and why it bans shellfish, is that they're the two things most likely to just give you food poisoning. That it actually probably was just good advice rather than like a biblical. Anyway, that's like a broadly held belief. Okay, but this question is poignant enough that for the second time, all of the attendants slap their coffins. However, I will point out that this time Ianthe does not say, ooh, because this one fucking hits home. So the attendants rearrange the coffins to make 2 benches and a table, and they give Ianthe some cards, and they literally start playing a card game across from one another. Ianthe says killing Corona and consuming her soul would have been a rather peculiar thing to do under the circumstances, because the Cavalier's not just a battery, it's also a defensive system. And because Corona's not there, she can say that Corona looks cute waving a sword around, but she's not good at it. Palamides points out, I think quite reasonably, that defensive capabilities can be trained, but also, so Ianthe explains that when the autonomous layer takes over, it's just the Cavalier's ability frozen at the point of death. Palamide says, "Are you sure?" Which is also interesting and goes back to this, can the necromancer feed back? Is any of the conscious experience that this necromancer is having feeding back to their Cavalier soul that takes over? But I think the other piece of this that's interesting is Pal also points out that being half a lictor is still an insane amount of power. Even if you didn't have the defensive capabilities, which Harrow did not have, you would still be a pretty baller necromancer at hard, minimum. So Pal keeps pressing. What would you have done instead? Would you have used someone else's Cavaliers? What would you have done instead if there was no one else left? Cytherea the First is coming up the stairs, and the Tridentarii are the only survivors. Do you fold or raise? And Ianthe says she wouldn't kill Corona even under those circumstances. Corona is her twin sister. She wouldn't expect Palamides to understand.
We're back to this argument.
She is her ambitions. I think Corona is somehow her ambition. And I don't know if it's Corona's goals or Corona surviving or whatever it is, but I think it's not that she even loves Corona more than herself. I think Corona is her only goal in a weird form of love.
Yep. I have a counter argument to add into this, though, because I think everything's a squish. Palamides agrees with you, basically says, quotes back at her, the goal is always worth the cost, right? You already said that to me, Ianthe. So logically, there are two possibilities. Either there are costs that even Ianthe Tridentarius won't pay, or Coronabeth herself is part of your goal, which is what we've been theorizing about. I would argue that the answer is and, not or. I actually almost wonder to some degree. So I didn't think about this until we were talking about it here, but this idea of I am my ambitions really limits your sense of self, sense of soul, sense of meaning. Once you've accomplished those ambitions, are you just nothing then? So there's this part of me that's like, maybe Ianthe actually has some problems with actually seeing herself as valuable. Maybe Ianthe is more insecure than we think. And I think a person like that would value someone that they think is incredible over themselves, would allow that person to become their only goal or to dictate their only goal. So there's also this part of me that wonders if part of this is the genuine answer. Corona is her twin sister. She will do anything for her and has transformed her whole life to mean that.
Yeah.
But Ianthe slaps down her final card. She's like, the game is over. I don't need to answer anymore. It's time for you to pick a coffin. It is very clear that this one of all the questions actually hit home, that Ianthe couldn't answer well, did not like the conversation. So Palamides asks for one more question, a yes-no question. If Ianthe can answer it at all, if she is capable of answering, he will surrender. He doesn't care what the answer is. It's just whether or not she can answer. And this is an interesting thing because I actually think this also goes back to what Josh was saying earlier, why does Ianthe do this? We are now at a point where Palamides has exhausted his questions. Ianthe says, I don't owe you anything. But she lets him do this anyway. And it's not a good move strategically. So I think that's kind of interesting. Does she want him to win?
I think she can't win.
Yeah, I feel like this is the point where Palamides is kind of gaining control.
He's finally asked a question that gave him the upper hand.
Yeah, the battle's turning the corner now. And he's taking control of what the rules are now.
That's really interesting. And in that same kind of format of Wake taking control of the bubble,
exactly.
Whoever is kind of dominant gets to dictate the rules. That's really interesting.
They get to
really
dictate
insightful.
what the reality is.
Because I was going to say, if he was getting the upper hand, why does she then let him get this extra question? But no, he's getting the upper hand so he can control how the game works.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay, so here is that last question. Do you know where Nibirius Turn's body is? And Ianthe doesn't really answer. They each walk to the end of the row of coffins and they slowly start opening the doors, revealing emptiness, while Palamides is doing the traditional Hercule Poirot end of whodunit monologue. So Palamides lays out the discrepancies. Pal came in wearing a purple tie. He was already weirded out by that, but it was Ianthe's house. But it really got weird when Pal found himself lighting up a cigarette. And that's because cigarettes do not exist on space stations. Unbelievably dangerous. Bad idea. This is actually something Ianthe references.
What a power play.
Yes, exactly. What a power play that Augustine is smoking on the Mithraeum. Palamedes understands the general concept, but he wouldn't know how to very cleanly and sexily light up a cigarette like he did. Additionally, Ianthe had this knowledge of how Gideon fought at Canaan House, despite the fact that she probably never saw Gideon fight. And additionally, her opinions were informed by someone who really understood swordsmanship, who understood sports, and who was pissed that she hadn't followed the rules of dueling.
Sounds familiar.
My favorite here is that Palamedes points out that, if she had seen that fight, she would have thought this thing of ending the fight by punching Babs in the stomach was, the funniest fucking thing. Ianthe would have thought that was funnier than anybody. And then also, he references his own new love of trash talk. He's like, that's not me. In short, Ianthe has knowledge she couldn't have. It's Babs's knowledge. And Palamedes has knowledge he couldn't have. It's Ianthe's knowledge leaking in. This is because they're so closely entangled that things are actually seeping across. It's ink or blood that's melting across the boundaries here. Palamedes is actually familiar with this phenomenon because he started acquiring memories that aren't his while he's been living in Camilla's body. Souls are permeable. The only answer she got wrong was that first answer. When they're close together, they bleed, they mingle, they contaminate each other. And what that tells you is that when a lictor absorbs a cavalier's soul, they start to mix. There is no body in any of the coffins. There is no separate and intact Nibirius to find. There is instead a grafting, a new creature, Ianthe Nibirius. The curtain falls.
And I think it's important to mention that they're opening the coffins one by one on either side. You're left with a single one in the center, and Ianthe looks at it. And I think it has to face the fact that she believes that coffin is empty, and I don't know if she's willing to open it to find out. And that's when the curtain calls. So it's he fucking got her. And honestly, he
so
got
fucking
me.
got her.
I this whole time reading this, I going back, you're able to see these things that are clearly Nibirius or clearly Ianthe in Pal, but it just seems weird and things don't fit. And then having the whodunit come, his speech, actually really got me. I was so excited. I thought this was great.
I love that shit. You're oh damn,
it's goofy, but
realizing what's actually happening. I love a whodunit monologue. That's actually my favorite thing. It's very interesting, and you're right. It falls. The curtain falls before we open the last coffin. One of the things that's interesting is that last coffin to be opened is coffin number 3. I think that's one of the only times when the number is the number and matters. Well, it's time for a game. So I have to apologize because you guys always score the weirdest games. I don't know what happens when I write my scripts for you. It really gets out of hand. So this week we're playing I Don't Understand the Question and I Won't Respond to It. I'm going to ask you each to come up with a question that the fair Palamedes ought to have asked Ianthe. And then together we're going to brainstorm how the stage would have been rearranged, what the aesthetic and activity would be, and if we want, we can add in how the conversation would go and what we would learn. Sonia, do you have a question that Palamedes would ask?
I have. Ianthe, your sister has now aged 10 months beyond what you will ever see. You are frozen in time. What will you do in the face of this ever-widening gap?
Oh, my gosh.
Effectively, how will you survive your sister dying of old age?
Damn.
That's actually devastating.
Yeah, that's a really
fucking
good question.
Nailed it.
Okay, and my, thoughts on this is there's all this time she spends on the Mithraeum with this apple working on preserving it. And I never put together what that was. I think she's trying to make a version of Corona that will not die.
Yeah.
Because Corona can't be a lictor. She's got to figure out something else.
Okay, so actually, scheming. I mean, if we jump to the end of my questions here, I actually think we would probably learn a lot about Ianthe's plan from her answers here. I think it would be really hard for her not to reveal that she's not worried about it or that she's very worried about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think she would cover it with some sort of like thing about how, oh, like even when Corona goes silver, she's going to be gorgeous and probably wearing, you know, butterflies in her hair. God, it's exhausting.
Yeah, she would be flippant about it.
Yeah. I have no idea how things would be arranged or the aesthetic or any of that.
How are we going to rearrange the stage? I'm going to be honest. The thing that came to mind, although I don't think it works, is if the coffins were on wheels, you could have Plamades be pushing Ianthe like in an effective wheelchair around the stage, which would be kind of interesting.
Yes. Or it also makes me think of like a hospital bed, like another old person kind of thing.
I was thinking maybe like the butlers could come back out and they're like either putting makeup on Ianthe or like giving her a haircut or something.
Yeah, I was thinking like a vanity style thing.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Brilliant. Nailed it. Sonia, devastated. Josh, what's your question?
I don't think that Calamities would actually be able to ask this because I don't think he has insight into their relationship when they're on the Mithraeum, but I would want him to ask, when did you know you were falling in love with Harrow?
Ooh. Sorry, that's very good. And I feel like there are ways that he could deduce that just even from one of the things he mentions is like he notes that Ianthe keeps calling her Harry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so actually I like this as a real thing he could ask. That's also devastating. I will say the stage gets rearranged so that they're in like a horse-drawn carriage together, like or
Yeah.
or like
a
a
romance
car
novel.
in the 50s. Yeah. I like it. What do we think we would glean from this, and how does Ianthe react?
We would
slip.
learn like what the nature of what like the surgery that was performed on her, like what Ianthe's role was in it or something.
Oh, interesting. Right, because it would literally go back. Their first closeness is like on Erebos before any of the shit in Harrow the Ninth happens. Yeah, that's very interesting.
I also think you'll learn a little bit about Ianthe's concept of love maybe expanding, because I think Harrow is the only person she's ever had like a human feeling towards outside of her sister, because I don't even think she's quite reached that with Turn, as you see in the like, I've known you since birth, yeah, I'd kill you, you're fine. And like so it's a weird, it's like she tries to kiss Harrow, right? And then gets almost rejected and goes away. And it's the first time you've seen her make herself vulnerable and then regret it. She doesn't expose that side. So maybe you'll think about, I don't know, it might change how she interacts with Corona and her long-term plan a little bit.
I will admit that as usual, I didn't actually do my homework. So while I continue to think, Marie, do you have a question?
I did, and then I didn't write it down, and then I forgot. I think that what I was thinking was basically I wanted Pal to ask earlier something about Babs. And something basically, when did you start planning his murder?
Yeah, actually. I mean, that also would just be like, for us as the audience, would be really fun and interesting because we know so little about what Ianthe did at Canaan House. She has her own like end of whodunit monologue where she's like, you all didn't even notice that I did all of the trials all by myself. But
and I wanted like the stage direction to be something where it's like pretend cooking. Like the meat is out again. It's like a countertop and he's like slicing the meat.
Yes. It's Burger Place. It's like Bob's Burger setup. And they're like flipping over pieces of Nibirius.
Yeah.
Oh man.
They're like grinding meat.
Shit.
Yeah. Like very visceral, but like basically like when did you start planning this? Like when did you truly see him as just a means to an end?
This is also too, so like because you've created this insane theory in my brain now that will live forever that Nibirius was like sort of generated and necromantically augmented and yeah, but that means that he was built. He was a tool. Do you know what I mean? There's something there. And there's something really disturbing about the fact that Babs and Harrow have much in common then in terms of necromantically augmenting people. I love that. I have come up with my question. It is, will you marry me?
That's what Pal asks.
The level of eye roll
I couldn't come up with anything else, but it'd be funny.
What if you ask her to play Marry, Fuck, Kill?
Which she'd have a great time. That would be the entire thing. They would do that for hours.
Other
They'd become best
people
friends.
What three people should he pick? Corona, right? Or is that too easy?
Barrow, Gideon, Augustine.
Oh, there's something good here. There's something. Oh. Well,
new version of FMKR where we play as characters
Oh,
rather than our opinions.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Marie. We're gonna have to do that. I think it's clear that aside from our new game, we've learned absolutely nothing from this exercise. So let's dive right into rampant speculation. Act 5. Malice aforethought. So of course, we've thrown out a bunch of rampant speculation over the course of this, and if you have any more to throw in the ring, now is the time. But just in case you're as uncertain as I am, I crafted some questions that I think would be interesting to vote on. So are we any closer to understanding what Ianthe/Corona's plan is?
I actually think yes, but that could have just been because I wasn't paying attention before. And because I had never thought of the fact that Ianthe is now frozen in time, but is part of a match set, and it's the only time she's been out of step with her sister. And so I think that preserving thing is part of her plan as a way to make sure that Corona comes with her.
I think that's completely fascinating. And one of the things that we've heard from people is that like the goal is to make sure Corona can't die. But what you made me think of is that they still will be mismatched by some amount of time. So it makes me wonder if she's thinking about time too, like some sort of time dilation or some sort of manipulation there.
This also, like, not having anything to do with anything, but made me think of, as you were talking, that what if it's something about, like, the way that lictorhood is, way that it is now, that the lictors are not actually alive. Like, they have died too, and that's partly why there's, like, this soul battery thing, because it is a melange, like, in a weird way. Like, they're not truly, like, they don't age, they're immortal, because they are no longer truly alive the way anything else is. That's why they're a hole. That's why they're a void. That's why they aren't anything. That's why you can't like see into their bodies. They are the mausoleum of something dead. And they don't realize the portion to which they are a new fusion.
It's like the soul and the body have been cut apart, and then the two souls shaken together in a mix and then stuck back on there, or to some degree, so that it's the body is its unique thing, and then the souls are together haunting it. I don't know. Maybe that sounds weird.
Like it's ultimate necromancy where they're just like puppeting this meat sack.
Isn't that what we all do? We puppet the meat sack every day.
What is a soul anyway? What is it to be alive? Are we all just puppeting a meat sack? Kind of.
But it is an interesting question, and I think it goes to, like, the fact that the lictors don't seem to have functioning gametes, the fact that, like, I have no idea what happens when a lictor dies. Like, is Cytherea's soul somewhere in the river, or is it, like, I straight up don't know. I think there's something really weird happening here. Dying twice is a, like, consistent theme in these books. All right, so that was serious, but I now have just silly questions for you. What unexpected character will die?
It better not be Noodle.
Oh my god, that's who I thought of too.
No. Not dare.
That would be very unexpected.
I think Pash gets a bullet through the head like in the first 2 pages.
Yeah, okay.
First 2?
Oh, thank God.
Dude, if Noodle makes it out, I don't care.
I really want like Gideon and Pash to like have their moments.
Sex? Oh, okay.
Well, I think they're related, so that's a little weird.
Step sibling.
It's not the most incestuous relationship we get in this book.
No, it's not. But I don't really want to see it on screen, you know?
All right. You know what? We'll go to happier moments. What unexpected character will return from the grave?
I think
Cassiopeia.
Fuck yeah. Okay, that's a legitimate one. I was going to say Dulcie can't die. She's just popping back up like one of those things on your desk you flick over and comes back.
Flick it over and it like baps you back in the face. Okay, what's going to happen with our protagonist, Judith Deuteros?
Judith fucking Deuteros.
I think she becomes the hero.
No!
I think she has an amazing character arc that everyone loves.
So funny.
I think everyone will love her character arc.
What's it like to live in a world as optimistic as you, Josh?
That's my most controversial opinion.
I think that her character moment is realizing, like, that turns it all around, is realizing that her dad is fucking God, and then she's, like, just over it, you know?
Or she just has a real psychotic break.
Yeah, like I mean, sorry, this is like people who end up leaving a cult that they were born into. Everything gets ripped out from underneath you, and it's very, very shaky. Hard to tell what will happen next.
She'll be okay as long as she can win awards on the Blood of Eden side. She gets like little things on her lapel.
Yeah, sure, she'd be fine with that.
Will we ever get an actual resolution to this plot? Not totally. I think we will be unsatisfied and devastated.
Do we think, okay, actually, there's a really beautiful line in the story we just read that I love where Dulcinea is talking about how there's something really important and special and perfect about things that are uncompleted. And that there's like kind of a gift to having it never be completed. And I was like,
Tamsin.
Tamsin, are you just trying to set me up for sadness? But I also 100% agree with Dulcinea on it. So yeah. Okay.
But they've got to give us something. Like they have to at least touch on all of the things that are open. They have to be intentionally open rather than just like, I don't know, I didn't get to it, which seems unlikely, but I'm worried at this point.
Will happen.
Yes. I think you're right. Which unexpected characters will make out? Gideon's gotta get someone. She's so lonely. She deserves it at this point. I don't even care who.
It's Gideon and Noodle, but it actually just makes her feel better. Just Noodle gives her kisses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'm in.
That's nice.
She gets her heart back when Noodle kisses her.
What is on the other side of the stoma?
This is like my biggest. I have big feelings. I know no idea. Nothing.
An alternate reality where awful things come through.
It's also interesting that the 8th house sucks on them like a teat in order to get their power. What the fuck does that mean? Like, is this, in the context of like damming a river, is this like a small hole through which you shoot? This makes no sense. Yeah, this is, crazy fucking teeth and tongues.
It's always weirded me out how human-centric the stoma is, right? It's got teeth. It's got tongues. It is human parts. It is not animal parts. It is not rocks. Like, it is completely, I think, fabricated from the mind and world of people.
It's like humanity's vision would have it.
Yeah.
I think it's like in Looney Tunes when Michael Jordan goes down the golf hole and he goes into the Looney Tunes world. I think that's what it's like.
Solid.
Oh God, I love Space Jam. I think we got to close it out on Space Jam. That was good. That was great. Thank you so much to our dearest bone witches, Josh and Sonia, for joining us today. I love you both so much. I'm so deeply touched that you made time to do dumb shit with us yet again. And your insights are so fucking brilliant that they live in my mind just rent free. So thank you both.
Thanks for letting me come.
Thanks for having us. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
For sure.
I'm glad it's fun.
It's so fun.
That's right. We're fun people. Act 6. See you next time, my little nunlets. We will be back next week with special guest of niche fandom TikTok fame, Lizzie, for an episode of fan theories and rampant speculation. If you want to follow along with us, our reading calendar is available on our website at frontline5th.podbean.com. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, which are linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends and give us a 5-star review anywhere you can. And of course, if you didn't enjoy the podcast, feel free to lie. We have a Patreon, which you can join for access to bonus content every month. You can become a patron, and they are all scholars of the theater of the absurd, at patreon.com/frontline5th. And you can check out our merch at our Redbubble store linked in the show notes. Finally, if you have any fun theories you'd like to share with us, feel free to email us at frontline5th@gmail.com. And with that, I'll just remind you not to unlock any tombs or enter any doors without permission because, ghosts. Bye!
Frontline 5th is a Locked Tomb podcast conceived by Mariana Mako and starring Mariana Mako and Hannah Grunwald, and this week guest starring Josh Ariella and Sonia Grunwald.
Yay.
Our cover art was designed and created by Mariana Mako, who also edited this episode. Our fabulous music was composed and recorded by Blake Anderson. Sonia Grunwald designs our killer merch. Ha! Gorgeous! The Locked Tomb series is a completely dope-ass book series by Tamsin Muir, who does not know we exist and is in no way affiliated with this podcast. Ta-da!